I think we can describe that on a daily basis when we enter social media and stuff. We're bombarded by all sorts of events and news that seem a bit disconnected. And a lot of the time people try to connect the dots, and frequently they do see stuff, but they are unable to draw several implications. I think that this happens especially when it comes to mainstream media. So right now, a lot of people do say that there is a problem with migration and with foreign crime throughout the West, but they are very hesitant to draw the implications from it. And that's how we have a narrative that is created by the mainstream media and by the state that comes and says, no, you're only allowed to interpret this as an economic thing. So what they're trying to do is that they are saying that people will at some point find out, people will draw the connections. So let's rush to create a narrative that makes sense of these and steers it towards the direction that is helpful for the government. So I think that we could start by doing the reverse. And we could just tell people that we're not living in a society where the government isn't interfering in our lives. It's interfering very much. And it's interfering with social engineering. So if there's social engineering, it means that there is a goal that the government is working towards. Now, in the past, there have been regimes that have tried to coerce people into adopting a particular plan, a particular idea of how they should be. But this hasn't worked, and in the West, at least so far, it's not the route that governments have tried to do. They have tried to covertly subvert things. They have tried to get into the minds of people and get them slowly and steadily adopt a new vision, a disastrous vision that has a particular idea of what our role is within it. So what we need to do is to connect the dots and try and say that if there is social engineering, then there is a goal. And the government is trying to use a narrative that takes us to that goal and tries to enter into our own minds with linguistic tricks, with all sorts of narrative control techniques, into making us become the new people. Before we say more about this, we have Lotus Eaters merch to share with you. You can visit our website and support us, because we are funded by our subscribers. We're not mainstream media. We are entirely dependent on people.
This is, exclusive to the US election as well. And also, it's rumoured that it gives you a +5 buff in resisting government mind control, I'm told.
Exactly.
It's an unsubstantiated rumour, so take it with a pinch of salt. But if you drink from this, potentially, it could give you resistance to government programming.
If you drink from the Biden-Harris one, it's like drinking from the wrong cup in Last Crusade. Crumble into dust. Or Joe Biden.
I love that film.
Yeah, but unironically, I mean, you say this with humour, but there's an important message to it, because literally what is hanging from this election, and this is a US election, so this means that a lot of things are dependent on it for the entire West, is that we have reached a situation, a point of extreme polarization, where if you disagree with the Democrats, you're presented as essentially being demonic.
Or an enemy of the state. Evil, immoral.
Threat to democracy.
Exactly.
That's their word. Despite them taking undemocratic action.
Yes.
For reasons I've explained in a previous show.
So a lot of the times people were saying what the goal was. And they were denounced as really evil people. But now Van Jones actually said it. He said it out loud. So if he said it, it's okay to play it. Let's play it.
Asking the white majority to do something is difficult. And I think it'd be easier if we just acknowledge that it's difficult. No ethnic majority group in 10,000 years of human history that I could find ever went from being a majority to being a minority and liked it. And that's basically the request from the racial justice left, is that we want the white majority to go from being a majority to being a minority and like it. That's a tough request. And the reality is that change is hard.
So he said it out loud. How many times did people from the right wing or from the Republicans in the US say that this is the Democrats' goal, and they were denounced as, purveyors of hate speech?
Well, there's a phrase that we can't say on YouTube, but I'll use a synonym here. It's the large swap. That was a good way of saying it. I mentioned this because I read the original essay. And in the original essay, it's being given, I believe it's to a synagogue in Paris, as a lecture. And he said, if you import Muslims, you get anti-Semitism. And so women, homosexuals, like himself, who gave the speech, and Jews are soaring off the branch they're sitting on. And this got turned into an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that I was accused of spreading. And the same goes for Tucker Carlson or Vivek Ramaswamy, who say that this great swap is a pillar of the Democrat Party platform. Well, Van Jones worked in the Obama White House, shills constantly for Democrats on CNN, is just saying this is the explicit goal.
After the roaring success of our UK election coverage, we are indeed doing another massive Lotus Eaters livestream to cover the US elections on Tuesday, the 5th of November. We will have a giant roster of guests, both in the studio and remotely via Zoom, and we will be live streaming on Rumble, so we'll be able to say exactly what we think, no holds barred. Do tune in, it's going to be great, and hopefully we'll be ringing in Trump's second term, or perhaps we'll be having a massive meltdown. Who knows what the future holds. See you then.
I think a bit of Aristotle is very useful here, and I think Stelios will already know what I'm going to bring up here, and I think, Connor, you do as well, whereby Aristotle argues that tyrants prefer foreign subjects because they're easier to rule over than the natives who put more demands on their leaders. That's in effect what he
Tyrants
says.
prefer foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so he says it out loud. The goal is to make the white majority to go from a majority to minority and like it. And that is why, for years now, there has been a whole agenda to present a narrative according to which anyone who says that, no, I don't like my group to lose power, is presented in the worst way possible. So Van Jones is really honest about it right now, but a lot of people haven't been honest about it. So for years. So this narrative has tried to create a situation where it completely destabilizes people's understanding. Literally, weakness has been presented as strength by Joe Biden when 4 years ago, on the 8th of November.
Muslim communities, but African communities, Asian communities, Hispanic communities, and the wave still continues. It's not going to stop, nor should we want it to stop. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things I think we can be most proud of. So there's a second thing in that black box, an unrelenting stream of immigration, non-stop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America from then and on will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing. That's a source of our strength.
Quick correction, by the way. That was during the Obama administration. This was just posted in 2020, because you can see Attorney General Eric Holder. But it's important to know that, because
it goes even before.
Exactly.
Before that.
Which is what Van Jones was a part of.
Yes.
So this is a clear, collaborated consensus that this is going to happen.
Yes. So he didn't go out and say it out loud. He said, we're going to become a minority, and that's a good thing. Now, whose strength is it if you lose power and you become a minority?
Well, it's the strength of the global elites that are using Europe and North America as their own battery farm for wealth generation.
Exactly. So suddenly things make sense. The we it doesn't mean we as a people. And it's particularly important when the Democrats are trying to say that they are the only protectors of the popular will. When they say we, they don't mean we as a people. Why? Because they want to do social engineering to the people. They want to constantly have open borders and flood countries with people from anywhere in the world. That's why they're talking about endless stream of migration. They're not talking about cultural continuities and discontinuities. That's precisely their goal. So suddenly it makes sense. Every disconnected event you see, every gaslighting thing, everything boils down to this. Even things like that, like Judith Butler is saying, Hamas and Hezbollah are social movements that are progressive, that are on the left, that are part of a global left. Come on.
But it's also worth pointing out as well that America became great the more European it became, right? In that when it was 100% Native American, they were in the Stone Age. And so the notion that somehow this is a source of strength, when actually, if you look at history, it's the complete inverse, if anything.
So what they know, and what they keep telling us isn't happening, but when it does happen, it's a good thing, is that cultural change is often downstream of demographic change. Because as much as we all hope that everything is just a marketplace of ideas, that the best values will win out, for lots of people who are non-European, who don't think of themselves as very individualistic, they will have trouble assimilating into a new culture, because for them, their ethnic identity from their homeland is more important than the ideas of the host nation. So they know if they import lots of people in, encourage them to be multicultural, encourage them to live in their own cultural ghettos apart from the host population, that over time this will divide and conquer the population and therefore give them more power.
It is also worth pointing out as well that Europeans, white Europeans in particular, are unique in the entire world for having an outgroup preference when studied, as in they prefer people outside of their own ethnic group, which is unprecedented in human history and could well be our downfall.
Only liberals, I will say.
That's true, yeah.
And what we need to say is that when you're talking about the free marketplace of ideas and debate, there's a limit to who you can debate with. There's a limit. I'm all for debate. And I think it's a good thing to have debates. Why? Because it's the only way to combat polarization in a non-violent manner. Right now you have the Democrats in the US who are essentially saying if you disagree in any way with the idea that white people need to become a minority and like it, you're essentially a demon who is talking hate speech and needs to be persecuted. No, you can't discuss with people who think this. The only way to solve this in a non-violent way, which is the way that I want non-violent ways to solve things, is by taking a step back from that polarization and opening people's minds. And obviously a lot of people within politics are not going to do that because they want to profit from the polarization. The people especially who are voting need to hear this. They need to hear this. And what happened is that what this goal shows is that they have created and they are using a narrative for more than a decade now, for many years now, that tries to completely guilt shame people into accepting this. And people would normally say, well, my group losing power is a bad thing. So the whole idea is how to guilt shame people into thinking it's a good thing. And this requires an attack on several fronts, on culture, on symbolism. They're attacking symbols of good and evil on several places. That's why, for instance, we have orcs. What do orcs have to do with it? It has everything to do with it once you understand the symbolism in it. And what I mean by that is very simple. Orcs in Lord of the Rings are a symbol of evil. So when evil is presented as good or as humane, people's moral conscience gets destabilized and people get demoralized.
Well, if people have a destabilized sense of morality, then they're easier to control, basically, because they don't know what they stand for and they're more passive.
Exactly. Now, you would say that Democrats are particularly sensitive and they care about and all progressives are particularly sensitive and they care about people. And they have hate speech because they care about people's emotions. But I think we have been saying for a long time now that hate speech isn't about the victim. It's about the government. It's all about increasing government control. Here we have in the UK, black law student Suhail Ali, who called England star Bukayo Saka within quotation mark, monkey, used the N-word and a black piece of S, is let off because he was not intending to be racist.
Oh, so it's all right then.
So that's all you need to see right there. It's not about the victims. It's not about the victims of hate speech. It's about who to prosecute. So they said, this is a law student who may potentially vote for us, so we're not going to prosecute him. Was the other one offended by being called these things? Maybe, but who cares? Both of them are going to vote. That's how progressives think. Right, we have here...
Right, we're going to have to blur that.
Yeah, we're going to have to blur this. But there's an attack on religious symbols. We'll play it afterwards. So there's an attack on religious symbols, and we have a consistent series of Christian culture that is being portrayed in very blasphemous ways. So we had the topless nuns in skates. You could say that a lot of people may talk about free speech and and artistic creativity. In a way, yes, but look at the other religions that these people are not going to satirize.
Well, the funny thing is, they're sort of going for easy targets, because in the UK in particular, Christianity is the only religion that isn't protected by laws to criticize it. You know, if they started satirizing Muhammad, I'd have a lot more respect for them.
They're also the only religion that's in decline, whereas Islam is growing.
But the very expression of Christian faith is particularly offensive to some. So you could ask, someone would see this and they say, well, what does this have to do with it? Oh, some crazy academic said that the Canterbury Tales are potentially offensive because they're expressing Christian faith. But once you understand the goal that Van Jones was explicit about, you will see how all these silly events that seem isolated and fragmented and on their own, they may seem meaningless and sometimes cringe, sometimes funny, sometimes blasphemous, but not parts of something larger, are in fact seen as being parts of something larger.
They see it as the white man's religion, therefore they have to destroy it to demoralize him. And also on the point of it not being according to their power structure, the entire point of Christianity is to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, but to keep the convictions of your faith. And so if a tyrant demands that you comply, no, instead you stand by your principles, and you would sooner be martyred than become the kind of person that would throw your fellow Christians into a camp.
Exactly. So we have here a prestigious Russell Group University has slapped a trigger warning on Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales because of its potentially offensive expressions of Christian faith. No further comment is required. Here, we have the other element of it, because I have been saying, and a lot of people have been particularly hostile to my point on this, particularly also from all sides, that wokeness has two tiers. It has a Machiavellian tier in its higher echelons of power, and it has a sort of ridiculously naive tier who are a lot of the, naive...
Sort of like the Wicked Witch and her henchman, right?
Yes.
It's sort of operating in that manner, whereby she sends them to do their bidding, but they don't necessarily understand the bigger picture. Yeah,
so we have here a Middle Eastern affairs scholar from the University of TikTok conflating a Greek flag from an Israeli flag and attacking it. And I'll play this without sound.
Yeah, please get rid of it, because I've heard this video and it's annoying.
Yes, so what's going on is that she made the mistake. I think that people shouldn't do this to flags, because I think basically people shouldn't do this. But when she finished and she understood the mistake, she said, okay, my bad. But she posted the video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she's a narcissist who has also been told by the dint of her not being white that she can do no wrong.
Yes, but in the minds of these people, if you're against Israel, you're automatically good, especially right now. So it's okay that she defiled the Greek flag, because her intentions were good in the minds of that audience. Right, here we have Josh's claim about Brian Krasenstein. What did Brian Krasenstein do when it comes to comparing Trump? Who did he compare Trump with?
A certain Austrian painter who was famous for doing naughty things in the mid-century.
Yes, and he's talking about patriotic displays and a strong emphasis on national identity. I want to tell to Brian Krasenstein that the people who fought this Austrian painter also had a strong sense of national identity.
Well, do you know who else does right now? The Israelis. And nobody is telling Israel that they need to become more diverse or have a more inclusive form of Zionism while they're bombing the crap out of Hamas and Hezbollah. And fine, I'd quite like what the Israelis have, but then to say, all expressions of national identity are therefore Adolf Hitler, I think Bibi Netanyahu might have something to say about that.
Also, the North Koreans have a strong sense of national identity, doesn't. I mean, would the communist North Koreans be the same?
Soviets.
Yeah, there are lots of examples. I think nationalism isn't necessarily. It doesn't necessarily belong to any one political ideology. You can be nationalistic on any side of the political spectrum.
We're just the anomaly because we hate ourselves for some insane pathological reason.
Right. So now we have all watched the Hoya Saxa controversy with a lady who was shot by the police officer after attacking him multiple times and stabbing him multiple times. So you would say, what does this have to do with what Van Jones says? Well, I'm taking Van Jones out of it, but the narrative wants to integrate everything within it. So the important thing here is allocation of responsibility. This police officer was stabbed multiple times, but still there was a huge debate about whose responsibility, whether he had the right to defend himself. So do you have the audacity to defend yourself and think that you have rights as a human being when you're attacked? Do you have the audacity to think this?
I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, we have this Evan Love's clown here saying to Oren McIntyre, this was racism and abuse. He had a gun and she didn't. She was clearly having a psychotic episode. I mean, do you think that people could be dangerous when they have psychotic episodes?
With a knife?
Yeah, so people having psychotic episodes do not deserve to be murdered.
That Asian police officer should just have allowed himself to be stabbed, because didn't he know that that black lady's higher in the oppression hierarchy than him?
Yes, so people are slowly connecting the dots because it has been explicit. In several ways are explicit. It is explicit. Van Jones hit the final nail of the head of the coffin with his honesty, but this is something that is sort of simmering, and we have people who are straightforwardly denying it. And we have Sal the agorist here saying none of your problems are because someone else immigrated.
That's insane to me. So I know this account, and he's meant to be a fellow libertarian.
Yeah.
Although my ideology is very, very different to his. He claims to be a Rothbardian, by the way.
I know.
And Rothbard actually turned against immigration later on in life, when he actually came to realise that it was destructive. So even the person who he claims to follow disagrees with this position.
Students for Liberty put out a post that a friend of mine sent me on Instagram the other week saying America is only great because of immigration. Oh yes, hundreds of thousands of Haitians built America. Mm-hmm. It's the most low possible resolution thought.
Well, yeah, so that's the issue here, is that there are some people who are just unable to contemplate that there can be a problem with this. And this is a problem with, you could say, with some libertarians as well.
Yeah, I consider this kind of libertarian my mortal enemy because, I'm falling into the meme a bit. But these people who support open borders are complicit in the sexual assault and murder of the native population by allowing this to happen.
And also, I mean, I'm a classical liberal, and I completely disagree with this thing here because it views human beings in the abstract and completely ignores culture. And when it comes to studying social phenomena, what we need to do is to look at data. That's the only thing. If we're not looking at data, we're just like ideologues like the communists. So we have to look at data. And I just want to say Montesquieu is one of the authors who was constantly cited by the US founding fathers. He has written a book called The Spirit of the Laws. It's more than 700 pages, talking about how differences of culture impact legislation, and the spirit of the laws should reflect different cultures. So I'm saying this because people need to know that that there is a particular agenda against them. It is intentional, and people need to start waking up. Right. And here we have people waking up. I don't know if you saw, but Anna Kasparian said that she was sexually assaulted by someone. And she was particularly vilified by liberals in the US sense.
I hope this is sincere. I do. She has spent multiple decades advocating for these exact kinds of policies. So until there is some sort of atonement on that part, I'm not going to make her a right-wing thought leader. And this got personal. I really do hope she's okay. quiz her on all of her other perspectives on the issues, and she's still yesterday's liberal.
I said nothing of the kind that she is a right-wing figure or something. What I want to show is that she spoke about this, and as we are told, when she shared her story, she was accused of painting a wrongful picture of the homeless community, with some people calling her racist, even though she didn't say what the race the man was.
Dare I say that's victim blaming?
Yes, but that is also something that happens when people face the consequences of this dangerous doctrine on the personal level. They speak up, and even if they're in the left. Here we have from the German Green Party agricultural minister Cem Özdemir writes that his daughter is being sexually harassed by migrants. When she's out and about in the city, she and her friends are often unpleasantly stared at or sexualized by men with a migrant background.
It's true, yeah. That does happen.
And last thing, to Yuri Bezmenov's said it absolutely, he literally killed it here. He said that she did the mean. Sarah Aronside said, I have a question for MAGA. How exactly has illegal migration actually impacted your life? Have you ever considered that immigrants are not a real, what do they say?
Real threat.
That you're being played by Trump and the GOP to scare you into voting against your best interests.
I would love to see her say that to the mother of some of the murdered daughters that have been in the prominent cases recently.
Lake and Riley.
Yeah, could she actually look one of those people in the eye and say, how does it affect you personally?
Have you also considered that this is probably a bot account? Because that bio reads like a Fed operation.
I mean, to be very fair, it could be.
Yeah,
but
it's indistinguishable.
I have heard a lot of people saying the exact same thing. So, bot or not, this is what we constantly...
Bot or not.
It's my favourite game.
New TV show.
So, what we need to answer to this bot or not, but to this mentality is that this is something that a lot of Democrats have been explicit about, that they're promoting the white majority becoming minority and liking it. They're explicit about it. So this is why they're doing it. They have said so. Biden and Van Jones.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters. And if you want to see what else we're up to, you can watch our book club on How They Broke Britain by James O'Brien. Carl, Harry and I basically go mad discussing the ravings of a lunatic. And if you want to see what else we're up to, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.